Hi and welcome to PowerÄgg. For this video we will look at dealing with multiple fact tables. We will look at modeling data so that both fact tables can share the same dimensions. On top of having multiple fact tables, we will look at how to deal with changing dimensions between fact tables. As always, you can download the solution on GitHub and you can find the link below in the description. Let's have a look at how we can accomplish some multi-fact table reporting. Okay, we will be building the following report. This is a report where we are combining two fact tables. We have a relationship between them using a bridge table. We will get to that later. And we're able to use dimensions to filter both fact tables at once. So let's have a look at how this works. For example, here we have our orders and then we have invoices combined in the same visual. And we can see that sometimes we have the same order number for two different invoices. So once we have a canceled invoice, then we have a complete invoice, and we can see that the amount, the net invoice amount, changes between the canceled and the completed invoice. We have the ability to filter by owner. So for example, if I filter by max worth, we can see all the data related to max worth. That means if max worth is the owner of the invoice, as we can see here, number 11 is the invoice owner and number 11 is max worth. We can see that we can also see all the orders that are related to any invoice of which the owner is max worth. And this is pretty cool. We can see all the order details, and we can see all the invoice details as well. On top of this, we can filter by cancelled or complete invoice status. So let's say we want the complete invoice only. We can see that this is the complete invoice amount now showing. We can go to the bottom right here, and we can see that the detailed total amount is 152,000. And if we go 152,400, and if we go to the order details, we can see that the amount is slightly bigger, which means that somewhere the value has changed. So let's have a closer look. If we go to the order numbers, so we can filter by order number, we can see that for this order, there was an amount of, let's go up here at the top table, we can see that the amount was, for the order amount, 1,863.40 cents, but the net invoice amount is slightly less. And this is because if we go to the bottom right here in the invoice details table, we can see that there is an invoice discount amount applied after the invoice was cancelled and a new invoice was created. We can also filter by product name. So let's say that the product here is Manjimub dried apples. We can go to the product name, we can type in Manj, and then we have Manjimub dried apples, and we can see now the product product line item for that specific product, the invoice line item, I mean. So we have the invoice details filtered to that product, but also the same for the orders. So we can drill in a little bit more in the data. On top of this, we can also filter by company name. So let's say we get rid of all the filters, and we have here something called Tom Specialties. We go to Tom here, we press enter. Oh, Tom's, let's be a bit more specific, Tom Specialties, and if we filter this, we can now see all the data for Tom Specialty, and then we can filter by owner and so on. Now the final attribute this report has is that we can add row level security to the owner. That means that if the owner now is max worth and max worth is in the finance junior team, we should only be able to see invoices where the owner is max worth, but we also want to see all the orders that invoice is related to, even though the owner is not max worth. So let's go view as, let's choose the finance junior team, let's click OK, and you can see now that everything is filtered to max worth, and we can see all the invoices and the orders related to those invoices, even though the owner is different. Now, in order for the report to work the way it does, we had to create a very special data model. And what we are doing here is we created a bridge table that uses all the invoice detail IDs and the order details IDs, combines it with the parent table dimension IDs. So we have, for example, employee ID coming to order, and then we created a bridge table from this. And the bridge table is connected to all the dimensions, but also to all the fact tables. So if we filter by employee, the bridge table will be filtered, and through the order ID, it will filter invoices, and it will also filter orders and order details. And then in turn, when it filters invoices, we will be filtering invoice details. Now, this may look a little bit complicated, but throughout this tutorial, we're going to dive deep into this data model. We are going to see how it works and how to build it. Now, at this point, I have to explain that I'm not a data modeling expert. However, I did play around with this data model a little bit, and it does work. It may not be a best practice, it may not be as scalable, but for the requirements we have, which we're going to look at now in a second, this was a solution I found. So I hope you like it. All right, so let's have a look at the business requirements. So the first and the main requirement is to create a table that combines both orders and invoices in a single table or a single list. And additionally, we want detail tables for both order details and invoice details on the same report page. And we want to be able to filter both by one dimension filter only. Then we need row level security, where when an invoice owner is selected, he or she can also see the related order or orders, although not the owner of that order, and vice versa. So if we have the owner of an order, we also want to see all invoices related to that order, even though the owner changes. But we want a single owner filter. And then we want to have the ability to filter a product and see all detail items related to only that product, both from orders and invoices in two separate tables. All right, so let's get started with the tutorial. The first thing we're going to do is explore our data and our data model requirements. All right, so we are in Power BI, so let's explore the data and the potential data model a little bit and have a look at what we could need to be able to accomplish our requirements. All right, so the first thing we have here is our orders table. This is a header table, and then we've got a details table. So we've got orders, it's a fact table, then we've got order details, which is also a fact table. Then we have invoices, and then we have invoice details. Now, what happens in the process of sales is that an order becomes an invoice. However, it is possible to have multiple invoices for the same order. For example, an invoice can be created, then cancelled, then a discount added, and then another invoice can be created, which has a status complete. So the status of an invoice can change from an invoice to invoice, and we can have multiple invoices for the same order. So what the first requirement is to connect our orders to our invoices so that we can have both in the same table. However, if we want to be able to filter by a certain dimension, which is our other requirement, for example, the employee name, we're going to run into a problem if we simply connect the two fact tables because they cannot share the same dimension. We can have the dimension employees connected to either invoices or orders. What will happen if we connect it to invoices and we filter and we create row level security? Everything is going to be shown related to that owner ID. So for example, if you choose 11, we're going to see all the invoices for owner 11, and it's going to show us all the orders, which is fine. However, if we want to see employee number 3, all the orders, and we want to see all the invoices attached to that order, we're going to have a problem because it is connected to invoices, and we're not going to be able to filter that way. Now, products is a little bit special. We're going to see later why. Products needs to be able to filter the detail tables, not the header tables. So we're going to have to find a way to connect the dimension products both to order details and invoice details without violating any relationship rules. And then finally, we have customers, which is similar to employees, a dimension which we want to use to filter both orders and invoices in either way. So again, the same thing as employees, we're going to have to find a way how to connect these tables. Now, the way I found to do this is to create something called a link table or a bridge table between all the fact tables and the dimensions, which creates a relationship between all of them and allows us to filter in any direction. We're going to have to use bidirectional relationships because we're going to have a many-to-many relationship, which is not a best practice. But in this case, we cannot work around it, in my case. So we're going to have a look at how to deal with that later as well, in order for the data to make sense. Okay, so for the next step, we need to create that bridge table or link table, you can call it as well. Okay, so we are back in Power BI. I am in the data modeling view, which we don't need. We need to go to the query editor now and create that bridge or link table. Now there are two ways of doing this. We could do it in the front end. We could create a calculated table with DAX and do it there. However, I'm going to do it in the query editor for performance reasons. So let's open up the query editor. Let's go to order details table and let's duplicate this. I'm going to name this the bridge table. I'm going to select all the columns that I want, which are only the IDs. So I want the order and the product ID. I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to create a join with the header table to get all the other IDs for the dimensions I need. So I'm going to go to orders, create a relationship with the order ID. A left outer join is fine. And now we're going to expand this, and we're not going to use the prefix, and we want only the customer ID, the owner ID, and that is pretty much it. That's all we need. Okay, so that's fine. Let's click OK. Now we're going to rename this because it has to be identical to the next table we're going to create, because we're going to do a union, or we're going to append the two tables. So we also need the invoice ID in here, because the next step would be to duplicate the invoice details table and then to append the two. So we need to create a custom column. We're going to go add custom column. I'm going to simply say this is null. That's fine. And we're going to call this invoice ID, or in the same name. That's fine. Click OK. We're going to put this behind order. So we're going to have order, invoice, product, customer, owner. So let's create a duplicate of the invoice detail table. Let's rename this. We're going to call this invoice details bridge base. We're going to select everything that we want again, all the columns that we need. In this case, we have already columns from the header table, so this is a little bit different. So I'm going to select invoice ID, order ID, invoice owner ID, and customer ID and product ID, and click OK. And we're going to order this so that we have order, invoice ID, then we have product, customer, and invoice owner, and we're going to have to rename this to owner ID so that it is the same name as in the table before. We're going to go back to the other table, and we're going to append the two. So let's go to the home room. Let's click on append queries. And we're going to append the two, which is the invoice details bridge base table. Click OK. And we can see no additional column has been created. So we now have a list, a table of both the detail of both detail tables of both fact tables. And this one, this table we don't need in the front end, so we're going to hide it later, but for the purpose of this video we're going to keep it. So let's click OK, and this is now going to load into Power BI, so this might take a second. Okay, perfect, should be done. Wonderful, it created a relationship, so let's delete that. I didn't turn that off. Okay, so we have our invoice bridge table. We're going to hide this because we don't need this. This table is just used for later. And now we have our bridge table. Okay, so wait, here's also a relationship I don't want. Okay, so the bridge table is going to be in the middle between all the other tables. So just for overview purposes, let's move this apart a little bit. Let's add the bridge table to the middle. Okay, that's it. We created the bridge table. All right, so in the next step, we're going to define the relationships and the relationship directions. All right, so we're back in Power BI and I'm in the modeling view. and we can see now that we have that bridge table we just created. So now it's time to create the relationship. So the first thing we want to do is to connect orders with the bridge table. So let's drag order ID there, and we can see the direction is that the orders table is filtering the bridge table. Now I want to connect the bridge table also to invoices so that orders can filter invoices. However, we're gonna not use the invoice ID, but we also want to use the order ID so that the invoices can filter the orders, and we can see all the orders for all the invoices as well. So we're gonna use order ID, and we're gonna have a many-to-many relationship. We're gonna get a warning that this is a many-to-many relationship, and that's fine. We're gonna click OK. So you can see now we have that relationship. I'm gonna drag this in the middle, make this a little bit bigger. Okay, that's fine. Even a little bit bigger actually, because we now are going to add our dimensions. So let's go to our employees dimension, and we can see we have the owner ID. So let's connect the owner ID to the bridge table as well. So we have that connection, that's fine. I'm gonna drag this here. And then we have our customers. So customers as well, we want that connection. So we're gonna go to customer ID. We're gonna create the relationship with customer ID to the bridge table. Okay, great. So we have our both dimensions. So if we filter employees, we should be filtering invoices. However, the bridge table cannot filter orders because this direction goes from orders to bridge table. So in order to fix this, we're gonna make this bidirectional. So we're gonna say that the cross filter is gonna go to both directions, which is always not a best practice, but in this case, this is how it's going to work. Great, and then we have our products. So let's connect product ID to the bridge table as well. Okay, perfect. And now what we need to do is we need to connect order details to our bridge table. And for order details, theoretically, it should be connected to the header table. However, we have here the detail IDs for the product and stuff. So we can actually go ahead and create that relationship as well. So we're going to take order ID, and we're going to connect it to the bridge table. And this is again a many-to-many relationship. We have to say OK. Great, so that's lovely. So we've got that connected. And now the next step is our invoice details. And our invoice details, we want to be able to filter by invoice status as well. So if we connect this to the bridge table, this is not going to work because we can't go from bridge table with a many-to-many relationship with another many-to-many relationship to invoice details. We're going to have to connect this to invoices directly in order for the status filter to work. So we're going to go to invoice, to order ID, to invoice ID, because this is going to be the invoice ID. And so let's go ahead and create that connection, invoice ID to invoice ID. Lovely. Okay, and we're going to also make this bidirectional because we're going to later see that filtering by product now doesn't work because we go from order ID to invoice, and then we go from invoice ID to invoice details. So that's not going to work. So we have to figure out a way for products to filter invoice details. If we create a relationship, we have a circular relationship, and that it's not going to work. So we're going to create an inactive relationship, and later in DAX, we're going to use the DAX function use relationship in a calculate measure to be able to use that relationship that we just created. So I'm going to create that relationship now, product ID to product ID. Lovely. And we're going to see now how to use this data model and how to create our data and fulfill our business requirements in the actual visualizations. Oh, we forgot one thing. I also need to create a relationship between products and order details. So again, let's take product ID and create that connection, and it's going to be inactive as well. Okay, so for the next step, let's create our measures. Right, so we're back in Power BI, and I'm now in the report view, and you can see I've already prepared some visuals. So this is a table, this is a table, sorry, these are bar charts in the middle, and in the bottom we have two tables, and these are going to be our detail tables. And our detail tables have to be able to be connected to the product dimension, so that the product that is selected can filter the detail tables. Now we saw that if we go back to the model view, that we created inactive relationships between products and invoice details. And if product filters the bridge table, we cannot filter the details tables for the invoice because we're going through the order ID. So in order to avoid this and to have a direct connection, we're going to use a DAX function called use relationship. So let's go back to the report view. And let's have a look at what we got already. So we have our order net amount, that's fine. And we have our order net amount by product. And this is what we're going to create. So let's click on order net amount by product. And you can see we already have a calculate function. However, in the back, we need to create a context, which is going to be the use relationship function. And we're going to say we want product ID from products connected to product ID from our order details table. We're going to copy this because we're going to use this for our next measure as well. We're going to click enter. We're going to go to order discount amount by product, and we're just going to go in the back here and copy paste the same thing. Perfect. And we need to do the same thing for our invoices. So let's go to invoice net amount by product. Let's go in the back here, and again, use relationship, and I'm going to take the product ID from products. I'm going to create a relationship between that and the details table. So product ID. So we got invoice details, product ID, and then again, I'm going to copy paste this into the other measure. So copy, hit enter. Going to go to invoice discount amount. I'm going to paste it and hit enter. And that's all we need to do. Everything else we will look at in a second. Perfect. So for the last step, we're going to add all the data to our visuals, and we're going to test the solution. So we're going to test the filters, we're going to create row level security, and we're going to test that as well. All right, we are back in Power BI, and we're going to finish up this report. So let's add all the data to the visuals and let's test the solution. Okay, so let's start with the first table where we combine our orders with our invoices. So let's go ahead and add the order ID. Let's take the order ID, and then we want the order owner. So we're going to add the order owner. So let's close that up. Let's do the same thing for the invoice. Let's add our invoice ID, our invoice status, and our invoice owner ID. And now to finish this off, we're going to add our actual measures. So again, in order for the product name filter to work here as well, we have to use the measures we created that use the product dimension context. So we're going to have our order net amount by our order discount, or order net amount, sorry, by product. We're going to add this, and we're going to do the same thing for the invoice. We're going to add our invoice net amount by product. Okay, and we don't have the totals here because they wouldn't make sense because we have canceled and completed invoices. So we don't want to total this, so we remove the total. And let's have a look if this works. So let's select max worth, and we can see here we see only the invoices of max worth, and we can see the order owner is different. Okay, so let's try what happens if we select order owner 4. Let's have a look at quickly what the employee name and ID is. 4 is Margaret Peacock. So let's go and click Margaret Peacock. And this is amazing. So we can now see that we have filtered in a single dimension filter, we have filtered the order table to show me Margaret Peacock, even though the invoice owner is different. And we can see all the invoices, all the different invoice owners and the invoices for Margaret Peacock. And if we go back and we select Max Worth, we can see that we are only seeing the Max Worth data. So this is working perfectly fine. So let's remove here the data. I didn't want this. Let's create the number of orders, invoices by employee. So all I have to do here is go number of orders. We also want, I want the number of orders. So we're going to click number of orders, and we can see here number of orders by owner. So let's see what happens if I click Max Worth. Perfect. This works fine. Here we want the number of invoices by product name. And I forgot here to add the context. So we're gonna here also quickly create the relationship between product ID from the product dimension table and product ID from the invoice order details. Let's click enter. Let's add this here. And perfect, we can see the product name, we can see the owner. All right, and now we also want the order ID. So I'm gonna add the order ID to the filter here. And I'm going to use the bridge table order ID. And we can see that it's not formatted the way I want it. So we're going to go back and format this to text. Perfect. And now it looks fine. Also want to be able to search. Or in fact, I don't have so many IDs, but if you want, you can add the search function to it. And now we are left with the detail table. So let's go to the bottom left, and here we need our order details. So let's go ahead and add our order details values. So we want the order ID, we want the product name, we want the quantity that is sold, and then I want the measures. So I want from the order the discount amount by product, and then I want the net amount by product. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. Oh no, I'm gonna rename this. I'm just gonna call it discount, and here we're gonna say net amount, and that should be fine. That looks fine. So let's see what happens if I filter. Oh, that looks good, and it seems like it's working. Okay, so let's now do the invoice details table. Let's go to invoice details, and let's add our invoice ID. Then let's say we want the product name as well. So the product name, then we want the quantity. So we need the quantity that's sold. And then let's go up again and select invoice discount amount, invoice net amount, and let's rename this again. I'm going to call this discount and call this net amount. Perfect. Okay, that looks good. So now what we have to do, I didn't format this to be currency yet. I could do that, but I didn't bother at this point because I want to test if the data is correct. So what I'm going to do is select a specific order I prepared that has 2 invoices. Perfect. And we can see here we have the order, we have the order number, and we have the both invoices, so 2 different invoice IDs. We can see the amount. We can see the amount is different in the complete invoice compared to the canceled ones. We can see how many invoices we have by product, and we can see the number of invoices by employee. So here we can see we have both employees that have an invoice. And what's great, if I now filter again by Manji apples, I should be able to only see the apple values, and that's perfect. It seems like it's working. And let's test the cancelled filter. So we should be able to only see cancelled. Lovely. And if I want to see complete, I should be able to see complete. And I forgot something here. I'm going to add the customer name as well. From customer, I'm going to add company name. And I'm just going to leave it this way. I'm going to test what happens to see if I filter by Tom's specialties. So I'm going to go Tom's specialties and see if that works, and that works as well. So that's great. So the last thing we need to do now is, for our business requirement, is to add our role level security. And for the role level security, we're going to test two scenarios. We're going to test one where the owner of the invoice filters the orders and shows everything related, and another scenario where the order owner filters the invoices. So we see only the orders, where we see all the orders with all the connected invoices, even though the invoice owner is different. So let's go to modeling, manage roles, create a new one. Let's call this finance junior, and we're going to go to employees, and we're going to say employee ID is equal to 11. I'm gonna test this, and employee ID cannot be found, so I did something wrong. Hold on. Want to save it. I'm gonna go to employees, and I can see that this is called owner ID. So let's go back to manage roles. Let's go here and call this owner ID. My bad. Validated, it's fine. And now we're going to create another role. We're gonna call this sales junior, and we wanted number 4 for the employee, which is Margarine Peacock. So I'm gonna paste this, and I'm gonna say this is number 4. I'm gonna save this, save it, and this should now load. So let's go ahead and test this solution. So we go to modeling, view as, and we're going to try and see what max worth can see. So let's click on finance junior, and everything filters. That's perfect. And we can see here the amount is not correct. So we're going to have to fix this. Okay, so we can see that there is here a discrepancy. So we have in the invoice details, we have 1.2 million, which is the entire amount for all users, and here we have the correct amount in the orders. And that is because if we look at the data model, we can see that employees is filtering bridge table and is directly linked to the orders detail table, so that works. However, it has an indirect relationship coming from invoices for the invoice details. So what we can do is we can double click on the many to relationship, say we want to apply a security filter in both directions. Click OK. And let's go back to the report, and we can see that the amount has adjusted, and we are now seeing the correct amount. That is lovely. So let's stop viewing as the finance junior user, which was max worth, and let's go to modeling and click view as, and let's go and select the sales junior user. And perfect, you can see everything adjusted, and we can see for Margaret Peacock now all the orders with all the invoices, even though the invoice owner is different. So we can filter that way, and then we can see here all the amounts are also correct. They are the same. Again, if we go only on complete, we can see that the invoice amount has slightly changed because a discount has been applied. And if we now click view as, we go back to finance junior, we can see that this filters back to max worth, and we can see all the order owners are different. So that is great. That is a great solution. However, because of the bridge table, we might have performance issues when the data set gets very large. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching and for listening, and I hope I see you in the next video. Please feel free to download the solution on GitHub. The link is below in the description, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment. And if you have a better solution, of course, I would be more than welcome to hear about it. Thank you, and bye-bye.